The Bible, in James chapter 1 verse 14, says we're all tempted by our own desires. In other words, lust is wanting something just to feel good, not because you actually need it. It's like wanting a forbidden fruit because you think it'll make you happy, even though you don't truly need it. Our bodies have natural needs, and we feel desires when those needs aren't met. When you satisfy a real need, it feels good, like a reward for taking care of yourself. True happiness comes from taking care of your body's needs in the right way. But sometimes, those desires can lead us astray. If you ignore your real needs, that craving for something else won't go away. It'll make you restless and unhappy until you deal with the real issue. Humans have a powerful life force within them. This makes them immortal in a sense, because it can't be destroyed. This life force drives us to take action. There are two main types of actions. Good actions. These come from a genuine need within us, and they don't hurt anyone else's needs. Bad actions. These come from a selfish desire for pleasure, not from a real need. We can usually tell the difference between good and bad actions by listening to ourselves. If we're doing something because we truly need it, that's good. If we're doing something just to feel good, even if it hurts someone else, that's bad. It is the undeniable truth that every genuine desire in a person relates to a need within them. When this need is truly met, it will help them grow in harmony with other aspects of themselves and with those around them. True happiness or enjoyment comes from fulfilling these needs. When all needs are fully met, a person will be as happy as they can be and will not desire happiness for its own sake. Until every need is met, a person will feel a sense of lack and desire something they don't have. This desire will push them to take action. If their actions are not aimed at properly meeting their needs, they will be misdirected and will harm rather than improve themselves. Therefore, when a person desires happiness, it shows that some of their needs are unmet. Any attempt to satisfy this desire without addressing the true needs will harm their well-being and fail to bring happiness. In conclusion, happiness or enjoyment should not be sought directly. If it comes naturally as a result of living a true life, where all needs are fulfilled. Happiness that is actively pursued is never found because it is not an end goal but a byproduct of being. While a person is focused on seeking pleasure, they will neglect their true needs. Here, we establish the difference between genuine love and what we call lust. True love arises from a genuine need in some part of our being and drives us to act to fulfill that need, without any concern for personal gratification. In contrast, lust motivates us to act solely for the pleasure it brings, without addressing any real need. I will refer to true love as an expression of the Divine Father's wisdom and goodness, appearing in various forms, and to lust as something that leads to selfishness and conflict, prioritizing personal desires over divine values. In the hierarchy of existence, there are many levels, from the unconscious to the divine consciousness. Each level represents a different way in which the divine acts and manifests, ranging from basic life forms to the highest angels. Accordingly, there are many degrees of true love, which manifest as the true impulse to act. True love can be seen in our physical, intellectual, moral, and religious needs, and it becomes more exalted as it approaches the divine. Just as there is a true impulse for every level of existence, resulting in proper enjoyment when these needs are met, there are also varying degrees of lust seeking gratification at every level. The nature of this lust varies in coarseness depending on how it seeks to fulfill its desires. When we reflect, we realize that the desire for self-gratification stems from the self. This desire makes the self the center of attention and acts like a magnet, drawing things towards itself. It spends resources with the expectation of receiving something in return and never gives without hoping to get something back. This kind of action is inherently limited and creates conflict because what one person wants to claim for themselves cannot also be claimed by another. Thus, self-centered desires naturally lead to conflict with others. This selfish impulse is the opposite of the infinite and selfless nature of the divine. The finite and selfish nature of human desires cannot align with the perfect and harmonious nature of the divine. Just as the finite is the opposite of the infinite, human selfishness is the opposite of divine selflessness. This is why there is a conflict between love and lust. This conflict will continue until the divine prevails and everything aligns with divine will. I have already stated that true and legitimate desires are those that address our genuine needs, not just temporary gratification. True happiness comes from fulfilling these needs. Happiness is the fulfillment of desire, and it can only be complete when every desire is fulfilled. If we fulfill one desire but neglect another, we might feel temporary satisfaction, but it won't bring true happiness. On the contrary, gratifying a lust while ignoring a true need results in suffering. A person who is only focused on self-gratification will never find true happiness because they are ignoring their real needs. Pleasure seekers often find more joy in anticipation than in the actual experience. Their happiness is always in the future, never in the present. They never find complete satisfaction because not all their desires are fulfilled, and thus they are never truly content or happy. The pursuit of happiness, when focused on the future, defeats itself. True happiness comes from fulfilling the true desires of the present. Each genuine desire indicates a real need, and when every need is met, true happiness results. Anticipated pleasures are illegitimate and do not lead to true happiness. Focusing on future pleasures causes us to neglect our present needs and undermines our pursuit of happiness. Humans have physical, intellectual, moral, and spiritual needs. When these needs are harmoniously met, we experience pleasure from all aspects of our being. This harmonious fulfillment creates a sense of divine joy. However, neglecting any need or misdirecting our energies disrupts this harmony, leading to discord and dissatisfaction. This philosophy states that to develop harmoniously, a person must attend to all aspects of their being. The divine, in his wisdom, has given nothing unnecessary to humans. The physical body and its needs are just as essential to a perfect person as the spiritual being, and its demands are equally important. Fulfilling physical needs is as much a part of obeying the divine as fulfilling spiritual needs, and the pleasures from meeting these needs are just as legitimate. Neglecting or harming the body to benefit the soul misunderstands the divine order and harms the true interests and destiny of one's immortal being. The tendency to harm the body for the soul's benefit is a form of selfishness, aiming for self-gratification. Therefore, cloistered nuns, solitary monks, and strict ascetics violate the divine method and law as much as pleasure seekers do. They are driven by a desire for spiritual gain and self-gratification, just like any other selfish individual. The world's great error is failing to distinguish between true and false impulses, which leads to true and false actions, resulting in true and false development and creating conflict and false relationships. The divine teacher once said about children, "The kingdom of heaven belongs to them." A newborn baby naturally follows its instincts and continues to do so in all aspects of its being that are not controlled by conscious thought. When a baby feels hungry, it shows its need through restlessness and crying. Once fed, it stops crying. The baby only asks for what it needs to be content, nothing more. During this early stage, it eats to live and continues this way until it develops other needs that it becomes aware of but are not met. This neglect of new needs causes discomfort, leading the person to seek satisfaction elsewhere, which is how desires or lusts are born. Lust arises only when a genuine need is neglected. It is a natural law that neglecting needs creates lust. Therefore, when someone feels a desire for any kind of gratification, it is a sign that a need is being ignored. This neglected need is like a divine message, indicating an unfulfilled demand. Just as cherubim with flaming swords guarded the tree of life in paradise, human desires signal their essential needs. When understood correctly, these desires are actually God's way of calling them back to a fulfilling life. A child naturally becomes controlled by its desires due to ignorance. It feels uncomfortable because its needs are not met, leading to dissatisfaction and unhappiness. As a result, it seeks pleasure based on past experiences. The child quickly learns the pleasures of the senses because it can't fulfill its physical needs without knowing them. When it feels a vague need, it naturally seeks sensual pleasure. This is similar to the biblical idea that humans experience forbidden pleasures before understanding good and evil. The child's first act of disobedience stems from not knowing the true nature and requirements of its needs. Seeking pleasure, it violates its true nature. Humans have physical, intellectual, moral, and religious needs, and there are pleasures in fulfilling them properly. Desires can drive actions in any of these areas, and the nature of the desire determines how gratification is sought. The impact of satisfying these desires varies. For example, the effects of indulging in alcohol are different from those of enjoying food or social activities. Improperly seeking gratification harms in two ways. First, it distracts from actual needs, intensifying unnatural desires. Second, it overuses the organs involved in seeking pleasure. For instance, heavy drinking and overeating can damage digestive organs, preventing them from functioning properly. Engaging in excessive pleasures always leads to these two harms, with effects varying by the nature of the desire and how it's pursued. Although desires differ in expression and effects, they all start from neglected needs, creating a sense of lack. They seek self-gratification regardless of actual needs, leading to similar harmful outcomes. All unchecked desires ultimately harm true happiness. People's various desires are often similar in nature, which explains the surprising combinations of traits seen in some individuals. It's not uncommon to find people who are passionate about politics, morals, and religion, yet sometimes give in to their basest desires. Even those known for their piety can be notorious for their excessive drinking and immoral behavior, which shocks others. However, understanding the difference between genuine impulses and mere desires clears up this confusion. Such individuals are heavily driven by desire in all aspects of their lives, including moral and religious ones. Their piety, although deep and earnest, is rooted in self-interest. They don't truly love or admire the divine unless it benefits their own well-being. Their love for God is actually a love for their own happiness, seeing God as a means to achieve it. If God were to obstruct their future happiness, they would regard him as an enemy. These people confuse lust with love, seeking their own happiness while claiming to seek God, and celebrating their hopes while pretending to rejoice in God. Someone who seeks religion to secure personal salvation is just as self-centered as someone who seeks gratification in other ways. People can chase after false gods just as they can pursue immoral relationships. Those who encourage others to embrace religion to avoid misery and gain happiness are appealing to their desires. By focusing on hopes and fears, they actually stimulate lust. Someone who seeks religion to save their soul is acting on the very impulse that hinders salvation. Jesus addressed this by saying, "Whoever seeks to save their life will lose it." This impulse is selfish and not divine, which is why the influence of popular religions today doesn't lead to true redemption. Claiming that universal conversion to these modern churches would bring about a utopia would be laughable. Their obvious self-serving behavior is undeniable. It's no exaggeration to say that there's no similarity in character or practice between these modern Christians and Jesus of Nazareth. The redemptive essence of Jesus' teachings is missing from their religion. The difference lies in Jesus seeking the kingdom of heaven and its righteousness, while they seek self-gratification. Jesus' impulse was driven by genuine religious love, leading him to desire righteousness, while theirs leads them to crave sensory pleasures. In worldly matters, Jesus was like the poor Lazarus, while they are like the rich Dives. Furthermore, I must say that the popular religions today are driven by man's selfish desires in moral and religious areas, and it is harder to reform someone in these areas than in their physical desires. This is why Jesus condemned the scribes and Pharisees, who believed they were righteous and looked down on others. He told them, "You shut the kingdom of heaven against yourselves, and tax collectors and prostitutes enter the kingdom of heaven before you." In simple terms, true religion cannot coexist with selfish desires. You cannot serve God and money. The Pharisees' religion, throughout history, is the highest form of selfishness. The more they practice this type of religion, the further they are from true faith. Jesus condemned selfish motives in charity, saying that true charitable acts should be done in secret. Charitable acts driven by personal gain or satisfaction bring no spiritual reward. If someone gives charity for fame or inner satisfaction, they are not acting from a true impulse. Those who seek attention for their charity will not be rewarded by God. True divine action is spontaneous and without self-awareness, like when a person helps someone in need without hesitation. In family relationships, such as between husband and wife or parent and child, there is often confusion between selfishness and love. Many who think they love their spouses actually love what their spouses can do for them, similar to how some religious people love what God can do for them rather than loving God himself. This confusion leads to unhappy marriages. Often, people marry for selfish reasons, thinking about how their partner will make them happy. If their expectations are not met, their love diminishes. This is why the term honeymoon exists, as the initial happiness often fades once the couple faces reality. The husband, who sought his own happiness in marriage, may find himself disappointed if his wife does not fulfill his expectations. When selfish desires are not met, the initial love fad by confusing lust with love, many people end up disappointed and in unhappy relationships. When individuals are driven by selfish desires, they are unlikely to do better the next time around. Jesus referred to this selfish love when he said that to be his disciple, one must love him and his teachings more purely than one loves family. The point was that human love, or worldly love, is often lustful. To truly follow God and his truth, one must love with a pure love, not a selfish one. This selfish desire can also be seen in family relationships. Human nature is so inclined towards selfishness and lust that it affects every relationship, leading people towards disobedience and sin. Jesus' moral teachings aim to address this root problem of lust, symbolically cutting down the tree at its base and separating good from bad. In social relationships, the same selfish desire for personal pleasure often underpins friendships, distinguishing them from true friendship. Selfish individuals seek social interactions for the pleasure they bring, loving friends only for their usefulness and the gratification they provide. Their attachments are based on what they can gain, not on genuine selflessness. True love, unlike lust, reflects God's presence in every aspect of life. Following true love means aligning with God and walking the narrow path that leads to life. Conversely, those driven by selfish desires follow a broad path leading to conflict and death. Selfish desires lead to sin, which ultimately results in death. There is no middle ground between love and lust. Accepting self-gratification as a valid motive for action blurs the line between purity and impurity, truth and falsehood, holiness and sin. If self-interest is the highest motivation, then concepts like God, virtue, and righteousness lose meaning. Those who see gratification as the ultimate rule of action do not recognize intrinsic virtues like goodness or purity. They judge right and wrong based on outcomes, rather than understanding that bad results come from inherently wrong actions. People often make a common mistake. They focus on the bad outcome of something without looking at what caused it. Lustful actions aren't harmful just because of their results, but because the very state of being lustful is wrong. It can only lead to more wrong results. In simple terms, if someone has everything they need, they won't feel the need for more happiness or satisfaction. Wanting something you don't have shows that there are real needs not being met. So, trying to fulfill that desire in the wrong way will lead to bad actions. It'll strain and harm some part of you, creating a cycle where you're always seeking more. Lust, when acted upon, goes against what's normal and healthy, leading to sin. And sin, in the end, brings bad consequences.